Have you ever wondered why we even have the word powerful? Why do we call certain people influential? What's the origin of charm? Look around you. We use these words all the time, but until recently, these traits would have sounded strange to our ancestors. Power wasn't a quality we evolved with. It's a behavior we created. Some say it began with a single decision. What if I told you the first power move in human history wasn't made with a weapon, but with a look, not a sword, not a scream, just a pause, a glance, a maybe, and it changed everything. Way before history, there were humans. And even before humans, there were hominins or early relatives who walked upright on two legs. For millions of years, their brains barely changed. Then about 300,000 years ago, something shifted. Homo sapiens appeared, and with us came the ability to cooperate, to hunt big game, and eventually to outcompete every other species on the planet. Some say that leap in intelligence was thanks to our looks. See, when our ancestors split from other primates, they didn't have much going for them. They were small, not great hunters, and they weren't even the fastest. So to survive, they had to work together. And the best way to coordinate? To catch another's eye? A glance could communicate danger, tell if someone was ready to hunt, or show if they were worthy to mate. Body language became the first currency of power. It bridged the gap between grunts and speech. It could convey unspoken trust, and that had never happened before. In nature, strength usually does the talking. In the human world, it was about timing. It was about reading another person's intentions, desires, fears. And if you could decipher that code, you could thrive. Suddenly, the ability to influence mattered more than physical force, and that's when our story starts. Before the idea of power even had a name, they didn't have mirrors, no polished stones, no shiny surfaces, no bathroom selfies. The only time they saw themselves was when the water stood still. No calendars either, no birthdays, no anniversaries, no this is the day we met. Time passed in seasons, in blood, in shadows. There weren't wedding rings or vows or even a word for love. There were no locks, no doors, no cops, no priests. No one to say, hey, you can't do that. It was just open land, open eyes, open threats. And in that Paleolithic dark, women were born. A world where strength wasn't earned, was taken. Where survival didn't favor the kind, the fair, or the good. It favored the aware, the quick. The ones who could read a twitch in a brow like a wolf reads the wind. It didn't reward virtue. It rewarded timing. And women, they weren't weak. But they were watched. Their bodies bled, birthed, confused, awed, attracted. To some, they were sacred. To others, they were opportunity. So when the women of prehistory realized no one was going to protect them, not the gods, not the tribe, not even the men who shared their fire, they stopped waiting for protection. They learned how to wield something sharper, quieter, more dangerous than any knife. Desire, they learned to control it, to aim it, to shape it like smoke, give just enough to spark interest, not surrender. Because when strength belonged to men, influence belonged to women. Picture this: a clearing in the grass, flickering firelight, a band of hunter-gatherers, 15, maybe 20 adults. No laws, no fences, just the hunt and the hunger. Food was scarce. Death was nearby, shelter moved with the rain. And love didn't exist. Just mating, raw, unfiltered, chaotic, no rituals. No diamond rings, no do you take this man? Just a man's desire, sudden, hot, sometimes violent. Some took by force, others used persuasion, charm, laughter. But make no mistake, the woman was the prize, not the decider at least, not at first, but women watched. They watched who came back with meat, who shared, who vanished by dawn. And slowly, a pattern emerged. When they gave in quickly, they were forgotten. When they resisted, they were chased. When they said no, they risked everything. But when they said maybe and walked away, something changed. They became more than a body. They became a mystery, not for what they gave, but for what they might withhold. That hesitation, that pause, that look over the shoulder, it wasn't weakness, it was strategy. In a lawless world, this was a sliver of control.
Ow.
Desire became currency, and women learned how to spend it. The body?
Ow.
It became a weapon, not one made of steel,
Ow.
not sharpened in flame. But every bit as dangerous, it wasn't for war. It was for negotiation. This was survival in slow motion. A woman didn't wait to be chosen. She decided when the game started and how long it lasted. And for some men, that mystery, that maybe, that became more powerful than beauty, more addictive than meat, more dangerous than fire. Because when the rules start to bend even, a little power never forgets where it first cracked. And this isn't fiction. This isn't modern minds projecting backward. This is anthropology. You can still see it today in tribes like the Hadza in Tanzania or the Kung in the Kalahari. No shopping malls, no Tinder, just firelight and instinct. And what we find is chilling. Women don't just mate, they maneuver. They flirt not for fun, but for protection. They dance not just to feel joy, but to attract the right eyes. They choose partners not for passion, but for survival. Yes, sometimes sex was traded for food. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes all it took was a glance, a whisper, a promise, never meant to be kept. Because in this game, suggestion was safer than surrender, and it could still get you what you needed. Hi everyone, welcome to this channel. I'm here with the poem survival class, and it started young. The little girls learned to read the room. Who shares, who stares, who stays. They watched their mothers, not just what they said, but how they moved, how they leaned in, and more importantly, when they pulled away. It wasn't play, it was survival class. It's where men won by force, women survived by being the prize. A prize worth chasing, worth feeding, worth keeping alive. But being wanted wasn't enough. Being chosen could mean safety. But learning how and when to be chosen, that was power. The body became a message. Every gesture a negotiation, every glance a risk. This wasn't passivity. This was navigation. Where brute strength hunted the mammoth, soft strength secured the future. Not through domination, but through design, like that. Thank you for sharing that, Reza. That is beautiful. Thank you for noticing that. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms before, but you're absolutely right. It's not about brute force. It's about finesse. It's about reading the room. It's about knowing what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And it's a skill that is learned. It's a skill that is honed. It's a skill that is passed down from mother to daughter. It's a very powerful skill. And I love the way that you talk about the body becoming a message. Every gesture, every glance is a message. It's a way of communicating without words. It's a way of negotiating, of bartering, of making an agreement. And it's an incredibly powerful way to navigate the world, especially for women who have traditionally been disempowered and marginalized. This is a way of finding your voice, of making yourself heard, of making yourself seen. It's a form of activism. It's a form of resistance. It's a way of taking back control of your own narrative. So thank you for sharing that, Reza. That is a beautiful, beautiful insight. Before the first cities, before the first laws, there was one rule that governed everything. If you wanted something you couldn't have, you had to pretend you didn't want it at all. Because that's how the game is played. In a world with no rules, that is. If you liked this story, you will love our series, The Art of Seduction. A 6-passo deep dive into the science of attraction. Check the link in the description below. The year is 2023. The place, a modern city. You are an ambitious young professional. You work hard, you play harder, and one day you meet someone. She is beautiful, intelligent, charming, and you find yourself inexplicably drawn to her. You want to know more about her, talk to her, spend time with her, but you don't. While you're figuring out your feelings, she's already figured out hers. She doesn't want you. She doesn't want to waste your time. She politely excuses herself and leaves. You're left confused and hurt. What happened? You were good looking? You were successful? You had everything going for you. So why did she say no? The answer lies in the Stone Age, where a woman's desire could mean the difference between life and death. But before we begin, let's address the elephant in the room. This isn't just another story about how women reject nice guys. That's not what this is about. Instead, we re-exploring a fascinating aspect of human nature that often gets overlooked. How women use desire to exert subtle control over men. It's a complex psychological game that has been played since the dawn of humanity. Understanding it can shed light on some of the most perplexing aspects of human relationships. You see, in the prehistoric era, a woman's body was her most powerful asset. She could use it to attract a mate, but she could also wield it like a weapon, a shield, and a Trojan horse. Think about it. If a woman wanted a man's attention, she simply had to reveal her body. Men were biologically programmed to notice and pursue her, but she could turn the tables by denying herself, by making her body scarce. Suddenly, that same man was on the defensive, trying to win her over, and the more elusive she became, the more desperate he would get. This gave women an incredible amount of control over men. She could make them do things they never thought possible. But it wasn't just about the chase. A woman's body was also a source of immense power. When she decided to give herself to a man, for 9 months, she would carry his child inside her, literally molding new life. This made her an invaluable partner, someone who could either nurture or destroy his bloodline. Women knew this, and they used it to their advantage. They would choose which men they wanted to have children with, carefully selecting partners based on their strength, intelligence, and status. The rest of the tribe might not have understood this, but men knew they owed their very existence to these women. And that kind of gratitude can move mountains. A woman's body could also be a weapon of defense. She felt threatened, she could hide her beauty, cover up and disappear into the crowd. Men would be none the wiser, unable to understand her intentions. This gave her a precious commodity in a world full of dangers, the element of surprise. At the same time, a woman's body was a canvas of expression. Her face, her hair, her clothes, they all told a story. She could convey emotions, desires, and intentions simply by the way she presented herself. This was especially important in a world without words, where communication was often limited to gestures and facial expressions. Women used their bodies to express themselves, to communicate with other women, and to send messages to the men around them. So you see, a woman's body wasn't just a physical asset. It was a source of power, control, and expression. It allowed her to hunt, to defend herself, to communicate, and to manipulate. In a world where women had few other options, they turned their bodies into tools, weapons, and shields. This might seem shocking in today's world, but it's important to understand that this was the norm for most of human history. Women weren't passive recipients of male attention. They were active participants in the game of life, playing by their own rules. Fast forward to today, and you might think that little has changed. Women still face discrimination, objectification, and violence, but despite these challenges, women have come a long way. They have more rights, more opportunities, and more access to education and healthcare than ever before. But this progress hasn't changed human nature. Women are still biologically wired to use their bodies as tools to achieve their goals. And in today's world, those goals might look different, but the methods remain the same. Think about it. In today's society, a woman's body is often seen as a commodity. Men stare at women, catcall them, try to buy their attention. Women are objectified in magazines, on TV, and online. But women have turned the tables on this objectification. They have reclaimed their bodies and are using them to their advantage. They know that their bodies can make people uncomfortable, so they use it to get what they want. They dress provocatively to get ahead in business, flirt with danger to get attention, or expose their bodies to sell products. Women have learned to use their bodies as weapons in a world that tries to objectify them. Take, for example, the #MeToo movement. It was a powerful example of women using their collective voice to challenge the status quo. Women shared their stories of sexual harassment and assault, using their bodies as a canvas to paint a picture of the systemic problems in our society. It was a bold move, but it wouldn't have worked if women hadn't mastered the art of using their bodies as tools. It's important to note that this isn't about blaming men or making them feel guilty. It's about recognizing the power that women have always had and continue to have, about understanding that women have evolved alongside men and have developed the skills and strategies necessary to survive and thrive in a world that is constantly changing. So the next time you see a woman using her body to get what she wants, don't be fooled. She's not just playing a game, she's playing to win. And she's been practicing this game for thousands of years. And now we return to our story from the future. You're still standing there confused and hurt, but now you have a choice. Do you retreat into the fetal position and lick your wounds? Or do you dust yourself off and keep moving? Remember, the woman who rejected you may have done so for a reason. She may have sensed something in you that she didn't like, or she may have simply not been interested. Either way, it's not the end of the world. You have other options, other women who may be more compatible with you. Don't waste your time and energy on someone who isn't interested. Move on and find someone who values and respects you. That's right, you heard me correctly. We said respect. You may be thinking, what does respect have to do with dating and attraction? Well, my friend, everything. Respect is the cornerstone of any healthy relationship. Without it, you're just spinning your wheels and wasting your time. Women aren't just physical objects to be won. They're human beings with feelings, thoughts, and dreams. And guess what? They want to be respected. Show her that you value her opinion, that you listen to her, and that you care about her feelings. Trust me, she'll appreciate it. Remember, a woman's heart is a fortress, but with a keyhole just big enough for respect to fit through. If you show her that you respect her, she may just let you in. So forget about manipulation and mind games. Those are just cheap tricks that will ultimately lead you nowhere. Instead, focus on building a genuine connection based on mutual respect and understanding. It may take time, but the results will be worth it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a comment below and let us know what other topics you would like us to cover in the future. Your feedback is very important to us. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. He had no idea what he'd awakened. Now at that moment when Neanderthal man stumbled upon the cave painting of a woman holding a spear. Pointing at the sky, he might have felt a chill, not just because the image was so lifelike, but because somewhere deep inside him something stirred. He didn't know it then, but that moment marked the beginning of a tug of war, a silent battle between hunter and gatherer, between two ways of surviving in the face of extinction. But there's another story here, a story even older than that. Let's rewind further, 200,000 years further. Here in this prehistoric Eden, amidst towering trees and ancient animals, lived our ancestors, Homo sapiens, the earliest modern humans. They were small, barely 5 feet tall, with brains almost a third smaller than ours. Life was a constant struggle. Food was scarce, predators were hungry, and death lurked everywhere. But among them were women, strong, clever women who would shape humanity like no other. Their weapon of choice, their bodies. It sounds strange, even shocking today, but in their world, it was pure strategy. Welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to explore why prehistoric women used their bodies as weapons, how they did it, and what that means for understanding the role of women in our history. We all uncover the surprising ways they leveraged their bodies and shed light on a narrative that goes beyond simple seduction. Let's step back. Everything we've talked about, the flirting, the withholding, the carefully timed glances, it raises a bigger question. Was it empowerment, or was it just survival with a better costume? Because these women weren't queens. They weren't rulers or warriors. They didn't write laws. They weren't shaping empires. They were just trying to make it to the next season, with a living child still in their arms. This wasn't freedom. It was strategy. Clever, brutal, brilliant strategy. From women who had no other cards to play. And yet, there was something else. Even in that raw, unforgiving world, they found ways to shift power without owning it. They changed behavior without raising their voices. They influenced men without lifting a weapon. They demanded more by giving less. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it worked. And maybe that's the twist. Power doesn't always look like a throne, or a crown, or a clenched fist. Sometimes power is invisible. It whispers instead of roars. It influences without being traced. The ability to change what people want, to redirect attention, affection, behavior, that is power. And prehistoric women mastered it. But here's the tragedy. That kind of soft power terrifies people. Because what we can't control, we start to fear. And what we fear, we eventually punish. So the very strategies that helped women survive, the glances, the silence, the maybe, they became evidence. Evidence of seduction, of manipulation, of deceit. Words like temptress, which tease, they weren't just insults. They were warnings. Warnings from a world scared of women who didn't play by the rules because they de-learned to bend them. And so came the backlash. From cave fires to church altars, From whispered gossip to written laws, rules were created, restrictions enforced, what she could wear, who she could touch, where she could be, who she belonged to. The body that once gave her leverage now became the thing everyone else wanted to control. Yes, prehistoric women used their bodies as weapons. But that power came with a price. And in some ways, we're still paying it. Look around. We live in a world of boundaries now. Apps, laws, consent forms. We swipe, we match, we ghost, we say we've come far. And in many ways we have, but dig just a little deeper. You'll hear the same echoes. We still judge women for being too much, too flirty, too cold, too confident, too aware of their own power. We praise them for being desirable, but shame them for desiring power. We still whisper words like, she's manipulative, she's playing games, she knows what she's doing, as if that's a threat. But maybe what we call intuition or feminine charm isn't something modern at all. Maybe it's legacy. A skill passed down mother to daughter, from a time when survival depended on silence and subtlety. They didn't build cities, they didn't leave behind books, they shaped something far more permanent. How we connect, how we pursue, how we choose. They shaped human intimacy itself. And that brings us to the final question. Why did prehistoric women use their bodies as weapons? It's not a question about sex. Not really. It's a question about power. When you have no sword, no shield, no say, what do? When no one is coming to save you, you save yourself. Not with strength, not with noise, but with mystery, with timing. The glance so sharp it could cut through fear, they turned vulnerability into currency, turned mystery into defense, turned the body into a line that couldn't be crossed unless she let it. It wasn't justice. It wasn't revenge. It was something deeper, control in the smallest, most invisible ways, and maybe that's the most human thing of all. Not just the desire to survive, but the desire to choose how. So the next time you hear someone say, she used her looks to get what she wanted, pause and ask yourself, what if that wasn't manipulation? What if that was a survival skill, perfected over 200,000 years? What if she didn't just want attention, she wanted choice? Because once upon a time, in a world with no mercy, that glance, that hesitation, that whisper, it wasn't seduction. It was a shield. Now let's turn the page on this prehistoric saga. Imagine a young Neanderthal mother named Ora. Her days were filled with gathering berries and tending to her small fire. Yet as night fell, her true work began. While the men slept, Ora and her friends would meet in secret. They shared stories, knowledge, and something else, a language of eyes, smiles, and subtle gestures. This was their power play, their way of navigating a world dominated by men. In this harsh, prehistoric world, food was hard to find, danger lurked around every corner, and men ruled through strength. For these women, the body became their most potent tool. It wasn't about sex, it was about survival. Every glance, every gesture was a calculated move, a negotiation of power in a world where they had none. By controlling their bodies, they controlled their safety and well-being. And this wasn't limited to a single tribe. Across the vast landscapes inhabited by Neanderthals, women devised similar strategies. In Spain, France, and Italy, the remnants of cave paintings and figurines suggest a culture that celebrated the feminine mystique. These early humans weren't creating art for decoration. They were crafting symbols of power. The woman holding a spear pointing to the sky was more than just an image. She was a silent rebellion, a testament to the power women wielded through their bodies. But why? Why did these women use their bodies as shields and weapons? The answer lies in the harsh realities of their world. Without the protection of male companionship, these women were vulnerable to attack. In a society where men valued strength above all else, they had to find ways to assert themselves. And they did so with subtlety, with glances, with pauses, with carefully timed words. These weren't displays of weakness, they were acts of defiance. They were saying, I am here, I matter. You cannot ignore me. This wasn't about physical prowess, it was about mental acuity. It was about using the mind, the most powerful tool at their disposal. But it wasn't easy. For every woman who mastered the art of the gaze, who knew how to wield silence like a weapon, there were others who didn't. Those who lacked the confidence or the cunning paid the ultimate price. Some were taken advantage of, some were silenced, and some were lost forever. But those who survived passed on their skills, their tactics, their stories, and so the legacy continued, echoing through generations until it reached us. So the next time you hear a story of a woman using her body as a weapon, pause. Remember Aura and her sisters? It's the prehistoric women who taught us that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most unexpected places. They lived in a world where vulnerability was a death sentence, where silence was golden, and where a glance could speak volumes. They were the OGs of body language, the masters of the subtle art of survival. And in doing so, they laid the foundation for every woman who came after them. If this exploration resonated with you, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more journeys into the hidden stories that shaped our world. Together, let's keep unearthing the past to understand the present and build a better future. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, sometimes the quietest voices have the loudest stories to tell.